Okay. All right. So, what I want to start with is your physical and your psychological health. Okay.
Okay.
So, from 2018 to June of 2020, right? So, a little
Okay.
over 2 years.
Right.
Your physical health. Now, back in April, you had said that you thought you felt better physically and that you felt better psychologically. So then I look at the different subscales and I see if it supports and validates what you say. So
Mhm.
from the beginning to now, in June, you're up about 6 points. So you went from roughly 82 to 88. Okay. And what I do is sometimes I'll add in the subscale of happiness to see if that makes any difference. And when I do that, it actually went up. It was 77, and now it's like 79.6. So you went up about 2.6 points.
Okay.
So basically, it agrees with you, saying that you're feeling physically better. Regarding your psychological health, it went up 8 points. It went from 85 0.75 to 93.75. And if I throw in optimism and happiness into that, it goes up about almost 11 points. So for some, so you started with 73 and you ended with almost 84 points. Um, so it also agrees that you're feeling better. So I just wanted to just stop right there for a second and see um,
Okay.
if you have any feedback on that. You're still feeling better. You're still feeling the same that you did back in April.
Well, no, I mean, since everything that's happened back in April, I mean, I still have the headaches. I feel better. I'm getting better,
Mm-hmm.
slowly but surely. But I mean, I think that there's just been a couple of setbacks with the other surgery and things like that. So,
So what would you say, that you're feeling worse than you did
no,
from the
I would
beginning?
say I'm equal to, but I mean, there was a slouch in between there.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, your physical health, remember, is made up of your emotional self-awareness, your problem solving, flexibility, stress tolerance, optimism. So it's coming in a little higher. You got it's about 6 points higher. Unless we throw in happiness, which is pretty low, then it brings it down to 2.6 points.
Right.
So your happiness and your ability to be happy is actually decreasing your physical health.
That's not surprising.
And also, it's also decreasing um, your psychological health. Even though it's actually higher, it's actually almost 11 points better when I throw in optimism and happiness. Um, it's still less than if I don't include them at all.
Yeah.
You're at almost 94. If I include them, you're at about 84. So it's about 10-point difference, which I,
Yeah.
I think is kind of interesting. But if I go back over to your overview, which is, your when it shows just your overall total EI and your composite scale and your subscales. So you actually went up about 12 points from the initial time of 2018 over the last two plus years. So you started
Yeah.
at 68, right, and you ended in June. You're at 80. So you went up
Yeah.
12 points, which is awesome. And if I
Okay.
look if I look at just your composites, right? Your overall composites, which
Yeah.
is self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal decision making, and stress management. So under self-perception, you went up 8 points. Self-expression, you went up 5. Interpersonal, you went up 14 points. decision making, you actually went up 19 points. And in stress management, you went up 8. Now, in happiness, you actually went up 7 points. You finally hit the 60s. You've been in the mid 50s for the last basic couple of years, you know. And so you finally hit 61 with your happiness, your indicator, right?
Okay.
So you went up 7 points. So if I go back over to overview, I'm always looking at your self-regard, assertiveness, problem solving, and optimism, and happiness. So your self-regard.
I've never had a problem with.
Pardon me?
I said assertiveness. I've never had a problem.
Well, actually, you have. Remember, because you're too assertive, right? You communicate your feelings or your beliefs in an offensive way more so than a non-offensive way. But the good news is that you actually went down from 119 to 105. You went down 14 points, which is actually good because you actually went up 26 points in the emotional expression. So what that is saying is that you're actually expressing yourself in a more constructive, positive way. Okay. So if we go to self-regard, though, you basically didn't increase or decrease. You're basically at a standstill. You started at 52. Midway, you went to 62. Post, at 1 year, you went down to 50. In August of 2019 last year, you went up. You stayed at 50, right? And now you're at 52 from June. I just want to check some. Yeah. So your self-regard is still a concern. Your self-regard is what is holding you back. Your self-regard is what is keeping your optimism and your happiness scores at a minimal. Although I have to say your optimism went up 18 points. So it went from a 41 to a 59, which is awesome. Okay, and your happiness went from a 54 to a 61, up 7 points, which is awesome. So if we could get your self-regard to move and increase.
Well, that's gonna have to be home plan that one because I don't know how to get out of my own head.
Right. So your self-actualization went up 12 points. You're at a 91. Your emotional self-awareness went up to a 104, right? And let me just go back to your overall composites. Your self-expression is the only thing that's keeping you out of whack, out of balance. Everything else, when I look at just the overall composites, are actually in balance, right? If I look at them in greater detail against your subscales, your self-regard is what is keeping you out of balance in your self-perception composite. Your independence, right? Your ability to be self-directed and free from emotional dependency, making choices without your emotions, without having to ask someone, what do you think? Because you're not trusting what you're thinking, or you're not trusting your choices. Your choices are more directed, self-directed. You're asking people less and less. Your independence and in that is keeping you lower in your self-expression composite. It's out of whack. It's at 84, where your emotional expression and assertiveness is 105 and 118, right? And you actually went down from a 90 to an 84 in your ability to be more self-directed and free from emotional dependency. Okay. So if I had to say something, I'm just going to highlight that. And I'm going to highlight your self-regard as issues that we need to work on. But that makes sense to me, you see, because if you don't respect self-regard is made up of respecting yourself as well as your sense of self-confidence or self-worth, okay? So if you don't have confidence in yourself, how are you going to actually make choices by yourself? So those two go hand in hand. So it makes sense that went down a little. Your self-regard really hasn't moved. And so I've highlighted those. So under your interpersonal, right, your ability to um, have mutually satisfying relationships and empathy and social responsibility and all of that. Your interpersonal relationships actually went up 22 points. It went from a 59 to an 81. And that probably has to do with the fact that you're understanding the importance of that it's both ways. It's two ways. It's a two-way. It's a two-way thing. It's not just about you making someone else happy. It's about you being happy as well. And we have talked about that a lot. You're really hardwired to always, help others and make sure they're doing okay and they're doing happy. And you've worked really hard on it being okay for you to make yourself a priority. And by doing that, I think you're really understanding the importance of it being a good thing. Under empathy, you went up 13 points. So when we first met, you said you really have no what did you call it? You had no filter.
Tolerance for stupid people.
You had no tolerance. You had, basically you had no filter, right? And you were at your wit's end. Your assertiveness when we first met was 119. Your empathy was 65. They're totally out of whack. But now you've gone up 13 points. So you're slow, and now you're at a 78. And you're slowly building on this, okay, I have to try to understand how people are feeling, other people are feeling. I have to appreciate their sense of whatever they're feeling. And this is a struggle for you.
Yes, very much so.
I know, but it's a struggle that's showing improvement. You went from a 65 to a 70, down to a 57, up to a 78 last year in 2019, and this past year you maintained that 78. Your scores from last year to this year are not too different, okay? I mean, and if they are different, it's because you're struggling to get yourself and your emotional self in balance, okay? Your emotional and social self in balance. So, same with your social responsibility. You were at 101 and you went down 4 points to a 97. But you know what? You were out of whack a couple of years ago because everything was about everybody else. Remember? It was, even though you had no empathy, you were just like task oriented. You were just about, and you didn't give a shit really about mutually satisfying relationships. But what you did care about was the other person and doing what you thought was necessary. It was more of an obligation, right? To do what you had to do. Your interpersonal composite was totally out of whack a couple of years ago, and it has slowly gone into a greater balance. And so because your social responsibility actually went down a little, everything else went up. You're almost there. You're almost in balance, which is great, right? Now your interpersonal, yeah. So you're just slightly, I would say, let's see, 78, 88, you're a little out of whack, and that's what's keeping you behind is your sense of empathy, right?
Okay.
So I think probably you might be faking it a little bit. There might be part of you who has real empathy and part of you who is like, yeah, whatever. All right, I just got to go through this. Like there's that obligation of having to appreciate how someone feels. But you're getting there and you're getting it. And I think over the course of the next, 6 months to a year, you're really going, if you really, are working on yourself, you're going to see a vast improvement in this. And to be honest with you, I think that is a real positive, especially for everything that you've been through in your life. To have your interpersonal composite and these subscales come into balance is a real plus, and it's a real success, I think.
Good.
Um,
Okay.
so decision-making composite, right? So your problem solving actually went up 3 points from an 87 to a 90. Now you've been in the 90s for the last, since 6 months in. So you went from an 87 to a 93 to a 96, back down to a 93, and down to a 90. So remember, problem solving on this EQI is finding solutions when your emotions are involved. So this is very, very testing for you, because you're very reactionary, right?
Oh yeah.
So um, to see you stay in the 90s, for the last really year and a half, this is tremendous, right? It's a great
Okay.
success and a great testament to the hard work that you're doing. Now, under reality testing, you went from an 80 to a 97, so you went up 17 points. And your ability to see things as they really are has really, it's actually, it's a great score, because I know you were always seeing things as a negative, and now you're starting to replace the negative with really how things are, right? So your sense of reality is more clear. There's a greater sense of clarity when it comes to what your life is like, how things really are, and your ability to be a little bit more objective. Now, I know you struggle with this, and it's a constant for you, but it's showing it, and it shows that it's a struggle for you, because you went from an 80 to an 83 to 100, back down to 87, up to a 97. Okay,
Okay.
so this says to me there's a lot of fluctuations in your life. You're okay. I think something might be going well. Oh shit, now it isn't. Oh wait, I think it might, maybe this. Oh wait, no, it's not. Oh shoot, up and down. This is a roller coaster ride, and you're allowing yourself to ride it. And we've got to work on that, because um, you cannot live your life according to how you would like life to be. You have to live your life with joy and happiness where it is today. And so we
Okay.
need to work on that, and you will the fluctuation here will stop overall. In regards to your income impulse control, you actually went up 25 points, okay, which is good. However, again, I see this fluctuation. You went from 34 to 43, down to 34, up to 40, and now you're back up to 59. So I don't really, I think that all of this, really, you're reacting according to how you're feeling and according to what's going on in your life. Okay. So
Okay.
this is another thing that, we got to work on. Your stress management composite. Your flexibility stayed the same. It started at a 93. Adapting emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Your sense of flexibility is also on this. It was okay. It went from 93 to 87 to 84 to spike to 105, down to 93. So you're at a status quo from a couple of years ago, 2+ years ago. Your stress tolerance went up 3 points. It went from a 91 to a 94. Your optimism went up 18 points, like I said, and this has been a gradual increase, which says to me that your attitude and your optimistic outlook on however you see, you're a bit optimistic. This has not fluctuated. It's not gone up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay,
Right.
it started at 41. The next time it was 41. The next time it was 51. The next time it was 54, and this last time it was 59. This it shows vast. I mean, I know you, and I've been working with you for over 2 years. I know that even though people might see a 59, and say, wow, that's so low, that's too bad, or whatever. That 59, those 18 points were hard earned points. That 59 is a success, because your ability not only, you didn't just stay positive, you've actually slowly increased your positivity about your life, even though you're on a roller coaster ride with your reality testing, your impulse control, your self-regard, and all of that. This has been, it's almost like it's been your anchor, right? And it's just like, you know what? I can get through this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It'll eventually be better. It'll be better. Um, so I like to see that score. I feel pretty confident that you're going to at least maintain the same sense of positivity over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, if not increase it. To be honest with you, if you could, I think it's piggybacked on your self-regard subscale, and I think once we do that, you might have a greater sense of positivity, because your sense of self-worth really is anchored in whether you're positive about yourself or not. Optimism isn't just about your outlook on life. It's this attitude that you have. It's this positive attitude that you have about yourself, about your life, about your comings and goings, about what you do, about your friends and your family, and just everything. And then your happiness indicator went up 7 points. It went from a 54, then it was 54, then it was 54, then it was 56, and now it goes to 61. That is a hard earned 7 point increase. Okay. So in the midst of all the crap that you've gone through over the last 2+ years, you've proven that you can increase your sense of positivity and your outlook on life. You've proven that you can become slightly happier. But again, it's a struggle. And I think the reason you've had these increases is because, I just think you're just like, I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to give in. And I think you're not going to give in because I think I think you really like yourself. I think you're in the closet and you're afraid to come out. I think you're afraid to step out of things and say, I like myself. I actually like myself, because I'm afraid. I think you're going to be like, well, if I say that, someone's going to be just hit me over the head and say, or laugh at me, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? It's just my feeling that I have. It's just an observation. I could be right. I could be wrong. Maybe, who knows? Maybe time will tell. I think that you actually like yourself, which is going to be the foundation to respect yourself, which is then going to be a foundation to have some confidence in yourself and your ability to move forward, which is then going to allow you to make decisions by yourself, free from any kind of emotional dependency, which is going to give you a better sense of how things are going to be in the future. It's going to give you a sense of competence with in when to act and when not to. Optimism and happiness are going to become a byproduct of all of that other stuff, which is going to naturally increase. I'm going to stop there before I go into something else, just to give you a chance to maybe comment or, yay or nay what I've been saying.
Well, I agree with mostly what you're saying, except the other part I just have to get out of my own head.
What do you mean by the other part?
The last part that you just said about my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel happy ever.
Well, you have to remember, a 61 for happiness does not suggest that you're a happy person. What it does, but what you have to take the small steps. You did go from a 54 to a 61. So it's showing slight
Okay.
minimal improvement.
Yeah, but what it's showing is that there are things about myself that I like because your test is, I want to say, on different things like my strengths, my weaknesses, and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing them. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with those things.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually say that I am happy is a different story. So that's where I'm crossed between the two. I don't know how to feel happy.
And
But I
that's
can say, but 2 years ago, I couldn't even say that I liked this about myself. I couldn't even find any positive.
right. And your optimism, the increase in your optimism is probably because there has been some shedding of light, so to speak, on your capabilities, and you can actually look at that and say, you know what, that gives me hope. I'm actually, I do have strengths. And in spite of my weaknesses, I can actually identify my weaknesses, and I can actually overcome them in some respects. Maybe not fantastically, but there's a little bit of improvement. I can actually identify my weaknesses, and the ability to say I have these weaknesses, and just being able to identify them, say them out loud, and say, you know what, I can work on these, is a huge growth step. So again, I'm not suggesting that you are this happy-go-lucky person. Your score of 61 says that you are, remember the norm score is anywhere from 90 to 110. So you are definitely falling way lower on the happiness indicator, obviously. However, you are showing improvement. It's a struggle. It's hard for you. It's a real challenge. But
Yeah, exactly.
I do believe that it is, this sense of not being happy is fueled with your sense of not having a really good sense of self-worth or self-regard or confidence in yourself. And if we work on that, I think, it might be, um, it might help. We can't work on everything. What I will say is that when I go into your some of these categories to see where you're balanced and where you're not, your your interpersonal um, skills or competencies aren't really too bad. They're the most balanced. Your decision making competencies are the same. The only place where if we work on your self regard, we're going to
Yeah.
see all of this stuff go away. Under your self expression skills or competencies, you're really, you're a little all over the board on these. Same with and your self perception. It's really your self regard that is really fueling these lower scores. Um,
Okay.
so everything that I see, makes sense to me. And what I did was, I don't know if you remember, but I actually logged your item responses, and I'm just going to mention, I'm not really legally allowed to share this information necessarily with you, okay?
Yeah.
Especially on video. But what I will say is that you have made um, some growth under self-regard
Okay.
in how, in the way you think of yourself. You've made growth under your self-actualization scale, subscale, across the board. Um, in regards to interpersonal relationships, now I'm looking at the competencies that have to deal with your self-regard, okay?
Yeah.
And what you think about yourself. You've actually made some, under interpersonal, you've made some growth there. When I look at optimism and happiness, you've made some great growth as well. Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to concentrate really on self-regard, because that is the one where you have had minimal, if not, you've had no real growth. Okay. Your answers were the same on the questions that had to do with self-regard. Okay.
Okay.
Aside with one of them. Okay. Um, so that says to me that you have not made any real growth. You haven't, there hasn't been any increase in self-regard. You've made great increases in self-actualization, interpersonal relationships, in optimism, in happiness. Those are the ones that I've been looking at with you. Um, I didn't put in your scores for anything else right now. I will probably in the future, but I want to focus in on the self-regard. Okay.
Okay.
So, which brings us to basically what this says to me is our last conversation with the home play and everything that we had talked about. It says to me and validates for me that we are on the right path with
Okay.
working in self-regard, working in those exercises or those strategies that I had given to you. And I know we had said the last time that we wanted to work through those together.
Right.
And that was right, and that was before you had some additional health issues and all of that. So
Yeah.
what I would suggest is that next week, Thursday. Actually, I don't know if I can do it next week. Let me see if I can. Next Friday. We could get together if that works for you.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, let me see what time, because I have my co-researcher coming in on Saturday, and I
Okay.
believe she's leaving Thursday, and I'll have any time. I'll have Friday. If
Right.
she does leave out early Friday, then it would have to be like in the afternoon or whatever. But I'll definitely get
Yeah,
in touch
sure.
with you. Probably next Wednesday, late Wednesday, I'll have a better idea of what time
Okay.
on Friday. And what we'll
Okay.
do is we'll go through those exercises. We'll spend about an hour or so on the phone,
Okay.
and we'll get through
Okay.
whatever we can get through. Okay.
Okay.
Now, do you have anything else you want to add to that, or do you have any questions?
No, it's just a lot to absorb. So I just, like when you send me the tape or whatever, I'll listen to it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because right now it's just all kind of muddling around in my head, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll send you out your overall results. I'll take out
Okay.
the chart on the item responses, because again, I'm not allowed to give that out. That is
Right.
confidential for MHS.
Okay.
So that's something I can look at, but as an administrator, but I
Sure.
can't um, um, share that. Um, with you unless I get approval. And there's really no
Okay.
sense to get approval, and they won't approve
No,
all of them
there's no.
anyway.
Yeah.
But I can just, like I said, I gave you generalizations for them. But what I'll
Yeah.
do is I'll send this out to you this afternoon after I'm done speaking
Okay.
with you, and then I'll also give you a link to this video after I upload it on YouTube, and that way you can listen to it as
Okay.
you're looking at the Excel document. Okay.
Yeah, that'll make more sense probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, if you want, you can send me an email with any kind of questions or any
Okay.
kind of whatever input or
Okay.
observations that you have. And
Yeah.
then I can throw it in the file, and we can also address that next week.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right.